I just created an outbound cold calling real estate agent. And it's a little crazy. So why do I say it's crazy? Because this isn't just your regular cold calling agent that calls with the same script to each lead. No, this script changes itself depending on the leads. This agent is able to go through hundreds of documented leads within a database, call them by their name, ask them if they live in that particular address that they may have on file, and then ask them questions about whether they want to sell that address and populate the database accordingly. This is invaluable for real estate agents. So let's get a quick demo of how this works. So here we have the dashboard, and there's two significant parts of this, which is the real estate cold calling pre-request that takes and starts the call, and then the post request that analyzes the call after the call is finished. So I'm going to keep this analyzing post request on active. So you won't see each node activate, but it'll happen in the back end. And for the pre-request, let's just test this workflow. This is pulling off an Airtable database where right now I have my name, 123 Main Street, and a phone number for this phone right here. So let's go ahead and give it a call.
Hey, this is Jenny. I'm an assistant with Atlanta Realtors. Am I speaking with Smorin?
Yeah, but I'm not interested, thank you. I'm just gonna hang up on her. How rude. I know, but that's what happens to a lot of cold callers these days. But this agent doesn't have feelings, so it's not gonna get butthurt about it. But let's see what happens in a database. We'll just give it some time. Damn. It changes to hung up. So there's different statuses that have been set up. Not called, not picked, hung up, and called. So let's reset this to not called. Nothing is filled in here. And let's be nice this time and actually give her a call. Or actually answer the call properly.
Hey, this is Jenny. I'm an assistant with Atlanta Realtors. Am I speaking with Smorin?
Yeah.
Great. Are you the owner of 123 Main Street?
Yes, I am. Address?
Awesome. We're working with buyers looking for homes in your area. Have you thought about selling, or are you curious about what your home could be worth?
Yeah, why not? Let's get into it.
Great. Can you tell me a bit about your home? How many bedrooms and bathrooms does it have?
It has 4 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms.
Perfect. Do you know the approximate square footage?
About 3,750 square feet.
Thanks for that. How long have you lived there, and when was it built?
Lived there for about 2 years. It was built in 2004.
That's helpful information. Any upgrades or standout features you'd like to share?
Well, it has a super large backyard, and we recently renovated the basement and added a movie theater, so it's pretty nice.
That sounds amazing. What's your timeline for selling? When do you hope to make a move?
Let's see, probably within the next 3 to 6 months, to be honest.
Got it. And what's making you consider selling now?
Most likely downsizing. House is too big.
I understand. Downsizing can be a great option. This has all been really helpful. I'd love to have an agent follow up with you.
And even if I cut the call there and she is not able to get the agent follow-up request or set the appointment, that's still okay because I've already spewed out all this valuable information that this real estate agent is able to take hold of. And if you see here now, it's populating in real time. So we have status switch to called, interest in selling, yes, current home, but there's also an option of another home. Summary of the call right here. We have a nice summary of exactly what happened with the call. Bedrooms, bathrooms, rough square footage, special features, super large backyard, timeline to sell, downsizing. All the information is there just like that. That's pretty amazing. So I'm going to break this video into two parts. First part, we're going to talk about the pre-request, and then the second part, we're going to talk about the post-request, because both these videos can be pretty long, and I don't want to go over like 20 minutes if I can. So for this one, let's get into the pre-request. So we're starting off here with a manual trigger, just because it's easy to test. But this can be anything. We can connect this to an agent that's on WhatsApp or Telegram. You could even trigger it through an email. Opportunities are endless, depends on what your client wants and is most comfortable with. And then you trigger it to, or you connect it to Airtable. Airtable is very easy to connect, and there's a bunch of videos out there that shows you how to connect Airtable to N8N. I'm not gonna get into it for this video, but super easy, it'll take you like 5 minutes. So once you get that done, once you connect it, to add your credentials, you want to have your spreadsheet named and then your table name, and you just pick those ones out right here and right here. And the most important part about this is setting the filter. So I have these statuses that I've created. It allows you to keep track of what happens to each of these calls. You know, are they not called? Are they called? Because in the beginning you want to pull all the records that are not called, because maybe some of these have already been called, maybe the real estate agent called himself and then he marks them as not called. So there needs to be a way for the agent to understand who's been called and who's not been called, and you can do that through adding a status. And so when you add these statuses, I like to also have a not picked and hung up just to give more information to the client. So then when you set this, it pulls all, make sure to click return all, pulls all the records that are not called. And then we start into a loop. And this loop exists so that we can go down and call each person within this list. And loops are not as great as I'd like them to be in N8N. I wish there's like a wait loop, you know, a for loop, or I guess a bit more specification into how we could create these loops like they would be in Python or in JavaScript. But right now they're pretty simple. And only thing you can adjust really is batch size, and and whether you want to reset after each loop. What is batch size? Well, let's say for this pulling records node, we pull in 100 records, right? That are no calls. In this case, it'd only be 3, but in a realistic scenario, we can say 100. How many do you want to send into this loop where it calls them? Well, you only want to send 1, because this whole flow is for calling one person among the 100 that you send. So whatever records come in there, you want that batch size to be 1, so it only pulls in 1 record, takes care of it, and then goes to the next one and works its way through all the records. So then you start the loop, and when the loop is done, you have a confirmation email up here. So let's get into the loop real quick. So we have this node that is a function node for adjusting the phone number. Well, why do we want to adjust the phone number? Because the way I have this set right now, and you don't have to set it this way, but it's better again for your clients. There is a type of field here called phone number, a specific field for phone number. And what it does is that it formats this phone number in a very, very nice way, where you have the parentheses and the spaces and the dash. If I write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and I move to the next, it just automatically formats itself, which looks great on a spreadsheet. And for your client who has to call these numbers or has to see these numbers, it's amazing to see in that format, but not great for the code to look at, because the parentheses, the dashes, it confuses them. So what this does, in a very simple way, if I go to the step, test it out, we have actually I'm gonna go ahead and mark this as not called so we can go from here. If I test it from here, we have our phone number like this, unformatted, and it just simply makes the phone number into just a simple string of numbers, or a number of numbers, not a string, I guess. But yeah, for that, this is the variable right here. That's the variable, input.first.json.phone. You get that by just clicking on phone and dragging it down here. Just copy this, .replace, and this text that I have here, / /D, / G, comma, to empty quotation marks. And that will just replace all this nonsense right here with just a nice clean format. Also make sure to include name, address, and ID, because those are the fields that you want to carry on, and you're not doing anything to them. You're just adding them and literally just adding them here and assigning them a name for the variable. It just carries them on to the next node because these are the only important values. And I'll go into what ID is later on because that's also very important for the post request. So let's set our values. Well, what does this mean? We're just basically setting the name, address, phone, and ID. Again, these are the most important values, and it's just good coding practice to set these values. And these three nodes are, I would argue, the most important nodes of this entire video today, because they actually create the JSON that starts the call. Now, before I get into this, I want to explain what happens when you start the call and why these set fields are very important. Because when you're starting a call, it's a unique way of running things. And it's a bit more advanced than it maybe could be. So when you have the VAPI dashboard here, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you're familiar with what VAPI is, because this is a pretty advanced level of an outbound agent. But on a simple level, when you're creating an outbound agent, you would create something like this. We have Jenny Atlanta Realtors, have a prompt, first message, all this good stuff, right? You'd assign it to a phone number, and then you have that outbound agent set, and you can call it just through this agent itself, right? And you can even just use this as assistant ID to call it straight from any workflow, whether it be Make or N8N. But the problem with creating your assistant on this dashboard is that as of right now, it doesn't allow you to dynamically adjust the variables. What do I mean by that? If I go to the first message here, hey, this is Jenny, I'm an assistant with Atlanta Realtors. Am I speaking with first name? That's what it has right here. First name is a variable that should be filled in according to the database that we're pulling the first name from. But in this instance, VAPI has no attachment or connection to that database. I know Retail AI has its own method of pulling in functions, but maybe there's a way to do this through a dashboard, but I haven't heard of it yet as of this video. So if I want to pull in the first name, if I want to pull in the address, the phone number, right, then I have to do it in a different way. And the way to do that is to create an agent, or I guess create a call every time you start a call. So to do that, it's a little annoying, it's a little bit advanced, but it allows to take your agent to the next level with these dynamic variables. And the way to do that is through the documentation itself. So this is a tool you will learn to hate, but also learn to love at the same time. Just go on Google, just write VAPI, create a call, like that. And you can click on this, pulls up this page right here. Now, if you go to create a call, click try it right here. This is basically a documentation. And you'll notice that this documentation is the same thing as a dashboard, but just in a much boring, less UI friendly way. It's a code that makes a call that the same way you would adjust the dashboard here that would create a call. So if you click try it, pulls you here, and that's where I'm at right now. If you want a bearer token, just go into VAPI dashboard, click here, click API keys, and you can copy it from there. Copy that, paste it here, your token, click done, you'll be authenticated, and your token will fill in right here. Then you want to go ahead and create your assistant. So there's a lot of options here. It gets very deep as you can get on a dashboard, and you can play around with it and change the assistant as you would like or as your client would like. But for now, I'm going to keep it simple. Transcriber, I use DeepGram. Model, OpenAI, GPT-4o Mini. It's cheap and it works really well. I always turn emotional recognition on. And then for the messages, you want to create a system role, and then the content, just write prompt for now. We're going to fill that in later, but that's where your prompt would go for your assistant. Then coming down here, voice, I always like to use 11 Labs. Andrea works well for me. She sounds like a real estate agent, in my opinion. And then again, you want your first message. And I just write first message right now as a temporary value I'm putting in here. We're going to replace that down the line. And for your server messages, very important, only have end of call report. There's many options here. You can have a whole bunch of stuff. Play around with it after the fact, but don't add something like transcript. I initially added transcript and that messes the post request up, because when you have only the end of call report as your only server message, then the webhook that is connected to the post request will only activate after the call is over, which is what we want. We don't want the webhook to activate as the call starts, because then it's going to miss a bunch of information. But if you write transcript on here, then it's going to start recording the webhook once the call begins. And the thing is, you don't even need to write transcript, because the end of call report has its own transcript. It has a summary, it has everything you need. So just have this by itself. And then you can have the summary plan. You don't actually really need to. And then that's all you really need, except for, you don't even have to have any of this, to be honest. Again, you can mess around with it after the fact, but just keep it simple for right now. Get it working and then advance it down the line. It's very easy to change. So you have your server and you have your URL. This is how you connect it to the post request. So right now, you can just write server for this. Again, temporary value, we're going to replace it. Or actually, if you want to even start now, we're already working on your pre-request. Create a new N8N workflow, call it post request, and create a webhook. Go to your webhook, copy this link right here, and then just paste it right in this URL, right? And you'll notice that as you fill these things in, it slowly populates this code right here. And this is the code that creates your call. And that's where we're going to import into N8N. Then you have your phone number ID. This is the phone number that is calling the client phone number, or the customer's phone number of your client, right? So in this case, it's whatever phone numbers you saved. I have these two, and it's one of these IDs. This one is a Twilio number. This one is a VAPI number. So you just copy this ID right here once you buy a phone number, and then you can paste it right here, phone number ID. And for your customer, this is important. Have a slot for number. You can write number there, or put a value in there, and save a slot for name. These are all values that we're going to fill in, but you need those values to be available. So once you add them, it adds here and it just creates an empty string, which is good, because we're going to fill that in. So now those are the values I think we should have for right now. Again, you can add your own and experiment it down the line, but this is all you really need to get started. So then come here, click copy to clipboard. So then we come into start call, and all you have to do is just click import curl CURL, paste it in, and click import. And everything will just automatically fill itself in. Method to fill in, the URL, the authorization. This value will be bearer space your secret value. I've removed it for my case just for privacy. Your body using the JSON, and then this JSON value will fill in with everything that you filled in. But for right now, we'll leave it there, but we're going to come back and copy that later on. So then we go to these actual set values that we're using. Now, why do I have a set value? Why don't I just connect all this information here straight to start call and start importing those variables in? Well, that's what I initially tried. And for some reason, when you try and do that, the HTTP request node doesn't like when you import variables in and mix it in with JSON. It always causes some sort of error and just doesn't work well. And what I realized is that I need to have the whole request saved as a variable, and then I just import that whole JSON request as one variable. And this is a variable that's already been altered. And then it works, because then it's just reading the variable as one long string. So let's just see how that works in steps. So again, we're setting our values here. this name, address, phone, ID. And let me explain what this ID is real quick. The ID is when you're using Airtable at least, each row has its specific ID. And it's not available to see unless you create a row for it, but each row has its own unique ID. This unique ID is very important because it is what allows you in the post request to figure out which row you are correctly updating. So if there's an ID, there's only one row that has that ID. So if you're updating a specific row, you want to make sure to update it based on that row's ID. So in a way, we need to find a way to transmit this ID for this particular contact that we're dealing with right now in that part of the loop to the post request. So we're going to carry that with us. Then we set our prompt in our first message. So this is straight up just copied from whatever prompt I made. And this I made, using ChatGPT, and also I researched some real estate cold calling, experts, and kind of figured out their strategies and made a script kind of like that. So it handles, when people say no and all that stuff, is able to understand how to carry that conversation like a salesperson would. So you can create a very simple one for right now, and again, complicated when it needs to be complicated, but leave a space for the name, for the address, and for the phone number. The phone number will be used later. You don't have to put that in the prompt actually, but so I have the prompt right here, and the very important thing about the prompt, and also the first message if you choose, is that it has to be in HTML. What do I mean by this? You notice how you have your /ends for a new line, you have your / quotation mark. This is the most important one, the / quotation mark, because whenever you have quotes within a prompt, you don't want the code to confuse those quotes with the quotes that signify the variable itself. Because this is a string variable, this is all string variables, and string variables are identified by quotation marks, especially in JSON, everything's identified by quotation marks. And the quotation mark for a JSON identifies the beginning and the end of a JSON. But if the JSON value itself has quotation marks, like for a quote that's in a prompt, then you need to make sure that you add the / before the quote so it knows that it's a quote within the string and not a quote that ends the string, if that makes sense. If this is all confusing for you, just take your prompt, throw it into ChatGPT and say, turn this into HTML. And it will just organize that for you. And it'll just convert everything and you won't get any errors. So when you have this, so I have my hi name, are you the owner of address, right? And then you just throw in your name, throw in the address as variables. And then if you guys have other ways you want to use your address or name, just throw it in. Phone number, we'll actually get into it later in ID. You'll see here that it populates as it should. And then we have the same thing for the first message. Hi, this is Jenny. Am I speaking with Atlanta Realtors? Am I speaking with name? Just again, throw in that name variable. And you can see here, it looks correct. And also make sure to click include all other input fields because we want this phone and ID to carry over as well. So let's test the step. And now we see we have a nice text where now it's not seen as a variable anymore. It's seen as a text, which is what is important because this node does not like variables. It only likes text. So now we create the final JSON. And for this is where we go back to our call node. We copy everything that was in here, the whole jumbled mess that we got from this documentation. We copy it and we paste it right here, right? It's going to paste, it's going to look messy, but it's okay. And everything should be filled in as it was, but now we fill in using the variables. So for the number, we throw in that phone number we have, right? That's the number that's going to be called. For the name, we throw in the ID. And there's probably better ways of communicating or transferring this ID between the pre and post request. But I noticed that in the post request, this name comes up. This is a variable that comes up in the post request. So I'm like, okay, let me just use this to transfer the ID over, and then I'll pull it when I need it in the post request. So that will be used in the next video. Everything else is filled in. As expected, we have our system role, and for the content, that's where we throw in our prompt. So we take our prompt, throw it in, and then we have our first message, and the same thing, take it, throw that in, right? Server URL, everything else looks good. So we test the step, and now we just have one variable and a bunch of text, which is perfect because this is the text that literally makes the call. And then we just come here, take that one variable, throw it in there, and click test step. And that should start the call. It's not going to for me right now because I have removed the value for privacy of my token. And that should start the call. So that should be good. And after that, I have a little wait function. This basically waits until the call has finished and then loops over and goes to the next person in line, right? And right now I have it set to 5 minutes because these calls shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. But I assume there's probably a way to more intelligently do this where you can check the post request to see if it has completed for that call and then, have a way to pull it over using webhooks and more HTTP requests. But I tried it out. It was so complicated. And I'm like, you know what? 5 minutes is not too long to wait if a real estate agent is just going to click start and then go on with his life, right? So it's not that deep, I think. But yeah, so, and also you can have up to like 10, 20 concurrent calls anyway. So even if a call takes 10 minutes, which is crazy because who's cold calling someone for 10 minutes? It must be a super valuable client. But then it can just go over and start a new call while the old call is still going. That's not going to be a problem. So after it goes through everyone, takes its time, calls everyone, gets updated information through the post request, right? Loop will finish and we'll go to a confirmation email. So this is a simple thing I created where it sends to my email, the real estate cold calling cycle is complete. And just a quick message saying that, you completed successfully, called all the contacts and the database has been updated. But the limit of where this can go is limitless, to be honest, right? Because after a loop is done, we can have this confirmation email be a whole status update for the real estate agent where they click start and this happens in the background and maybe an hour later they get an email and that email is just looking at this database and saying, here's all the people that were called, here's all the people that picked up, and here's the average size of their house and maybe where that house is located. And then here's people who hung up on you. You probably shouldn't call again. Here's the people that didn't pick up at all. So maybe we should call them again, right? So you can give a whole status update based on whatever happened in that run of calls. However your client likes. This is where you can get as custom as your client needs to be, and real estate agents would love that. So that is an overview of part 1 of the pre-request. As always, if you're interested in how to implement AI into your business, these kind of solutions, visit my website, optrexai.com. There's a link in the description for a 30-minute consultation, free, completely free. And I will see you guys in part 2 for the post request.